"65-year-old grandmother Sarah Jane Harvey lived at 35 West Kinmel Street in the seaside town of Rhyl, Wales. By all accounts, she was described as being a kind and sweet woman with a somewhat small stature. She had been widowed in 1938, and it was then she decided to take lodgers into her home to earn an income following her husband's death. By 1960, Sarah was struck down with a mysterious illness and was admitted to the Royal Alexandra Hospital for observation for what was later determined to be a stomach tumour. While she was away in hospital on the 5th of May of that same year, Sarah's 29-year-old son, Thomas Leslie Harvey, who was a taxi driver at the time, decided to decorate his mother's house as a surprise for when she returned home. Thomas lived in nearby Penzarn near Abergele with his wife and son. Something which had always intrigued Thomas was a near 7-foot-tall storage unit sitting at the top of the stair landing. According to a Daily Post article, Thomas was told that the cupboard contained a number of items left behind by the previous tenant, Francis Knight, who had lived there during World War II, but the cupboard was locked and Thomas's mother always told him never to open it. Needing to fix paintwork on the surrounding walls and being somewhat curious, Thomas opened the closet, forcing the lock with a knife, and what lay inside chilled him to the bone. The closet was dusty, draped in cobwebs and riddled with fly paper covered in dead insects. The closet itself was stacked full with old clothes and blankets. However, hidden within the mess were the mummified remains of a woman, her facial features being unrecognisable. She was wearing nothing but an old tattered blue nightdress. Though a very rare occurrence, the small gaps in the cupboard sides meant that over the years, warm, dry air circulated within the confined space, causing the body to mummify rather than decompose. Thomas was left shocked by what he had found, and therefore contacted the local authorities regarding his grim discovery. Police arrived shortly afterwards alongside forensic teams who removed the body from the cupboard, though with some difficulty. The body was subsequently taken to the local mortuary, where it was examined by pathologists. Meanwhile, a media storm ensued, with the press publishing a number of stories speculating ritualistic practices following an alleged leak of secret lab tests. The story of the so-called mummy in the cupboard case captured the imaginations of many. For something so strange and horrific to happen in a sleepy Welsh town was unheard of. The sheer bizarre nature of the case shocked the community to its core. As investigations were conducted, police visited Sarah in hospital and questioned her extensively. After initially denying having any knowledge about the corpse, Sarah eventually told authorities that the body in the cupboard belonged to a previous tenant in her 60s, Frances Alice Knight, this later being confirmed through blood and DNA tests. Knight was disabled and estranged from her husband, though she was receiving a percentage of his earnings as a dentist. Frances suffered from a number of health issues, including severe muscular pain, and when she lived at 35 West Kinmel Street during mid-1940, she was renting a room from Sarah Jane Harvey. One night, Harvey claimed to walk downstairs to make both of them some tea. However, when she entered Knight's room, she was allegedly already dead. There was apparently an incident which took place shortly prior to this, in which Frances screamed and was found lying on her bedroom floor, having fallen due to her frail condition. During this, Frances expressed her pain and how she would rather be dead than left suffering. Following the discovery of her lodger's body, Sarah claimed that she had become panicked and decided to hide Francis's body in the cupboard on the landing before locking it shut. Sarah's natural death theory was, however, contradictory to the autopsy report, which claimed that a stocking ligature and a groove were around the victim's neck, suggesting that Ms. Knight had been strangled, therefore was a victim of homicide. Unfortunately, due to the body's mummified condition, determining the cause of death was not possible. Interestingly, prior to Knight's death, she gave Sarah Harvey consent to collect her allowance money, as she was an invalid. Sarah continued to claim Knight's £2 per week rent from the post office for over 20 years, up until the day the body was recovered. In the years following, Sarah told staff that Frances had moved into a nursing home to live out the remainder of her life, and nobody seemed to bat an eye at this. It's unclear whether Frances had any remaining family who noticed her absence or if a missing persons report was ever filed. As a result of these intriguing findings, Sarah Jane Harvey was put on trial for the murder of Frances Knight. The prosecution claimed that Harvey strangled Knight with her stocking in order to obtain her allowance. The defence, on the other hand, claimed that it was common knowledge to wrap a stocking around your neck if you suffer from a bad cold, and that this explained the ligature marks. Ultimately, the jury found Sarah Jane Harvey not guilty of murdering Frances Knight, but did find her guilty of obtaining money by deception between the months of May 1940 and April 1960. She was then sentenced to 15 months behind bars, though she died a short time later in a nursing home following a battle with cancer. The mummy in the cupboard case is one which many residents of Rhyl in Wales still discuss to this day. What fate befell Frances Knight remains somewhat of a mystery. There was not enough evidence to convict Sarah Jane Harvey of her murder, despite numerous suspicions and circumstantial evidence which seemed to implicate her in Frances's murder. If Sarah Jane was not responsible for Frances's death, who was, and how did she meet her end? Was this a crime committed for financial greed, or was there a more sinister explanation? As of December 2020, the case of Frances Knight remains unsolved.